it's always fun to see Bill Gates being held to account for even a little bit. Now, personally, I would be more interested in seeing the interview with Bill Gates where they talked about his billion-dollar experiment, really multi-billion-dollar experiment that had the impact of creating even more the ripples from his experiment in terms of what it did to U.S. education. And the experiment they did in the Pacific Northwest with a bunch of schools, and then all the sort of subsequent and tangential funding that they had to turn schools into a certain direction of high stakes testing and value added methodologies of assessing teacher quality. And I never, ever, ever saw a single interview with Bill Gates about the Rand Corporation report that they commissioned that came back with that whole experiment was a big mistake. We should have listened to educators in the first place.
Or how about a question about him blocking IP waivers for vaccines?
COVAX, the whole reason why we have such a dearth of vaccines around the world, even according to COVAX's own sort of projections. Have not seen that interview either, but easier, I guess, for folks to do it this way. But it is nice to see at least Bill Gates feel a little bit uncomfortable in some moment, because hopefully this softens the ground for those other questions.
Right. There are billionaire kingmakers who affect so much of our world and our society who are never held to account for the structural things that they do. But now that he's associated with a pedophile, we get to have a little bit of catharsis that I wish could be extrapolated to more structural things. But again, helpful.
Play this.
It was reported at that time that you had a number of meetings with Jeffrey Epstein, who, when you met him 10 years ago, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution from minors. What did you know about him when you were meeting with him, as you've said yourself, in the hopes of raising money?
I had dinners with him. I regret doing that. He had relationships with people he said, would give to global health, which is a interest I have. Not nearly enough philanthropy goes in that direction. Those meetings were a mistake. They didn't result in what he proposed.
When she asks, what did you know about him in that moment? She's asking that because this is after he's been busted for stuff, not like.
Well, he's sort of answering. He might have been able to deliver money to my initiatives. Now, let's also be clear. This guy's got a lot of effing money.
Yeah.
Who do you need to sit down at a table with? And then, of course, the real thing is, like, to be fair to me, none of those things panned out. So
right. But also, aside from the philanthropy, what did you know about him?
Right.
That other people could have read about maybe in the newspapers.
And it's not like I got news for you, folks. When you're a billionaire, you don't meet with anybody who your minions have not vetted. But continue.
Right.
Correction. Those meetings were a mistake. They didn't result in.
That's why they were a mistake.
He purported, and I cut them off. That goes back a long time ago now. So there's nothing new on that.
It was reported that you continue to meet with him over several years.
Oh, that's new.
And that, in other words, a number of meetings. What did you do when you found out about his background?
Well, I've said I regretted having those dinners, and there's absolutely nothing new on that.
Is there a lesson for you, for anyone else looking at this?
Look how mad he is.
Well, he's dead, so
he's dead.
Looking at this.
Oh.
Well, he's dead, so in general, you always have to be careful. And I'm very proud of what we've done in philanthropy. Very proud of the work of the foundation. That's what I get up every day and focus on.
Well, it's weird that after being interrogated or, asked actually I should say, polite questions by this PBS reporter, that he goes to, well, he's dead. So no new information could be provided here.
That's right.
Right? That's when why
did
you
you learn?
Ask me questions.
What did you do when you learned about that? Nothing. Just had another dinner.
And just so you know, so you see seething, dead man can't talk.
Crack.
Oh!
I would like to focus on another thing he said, which is that I cut those meetings off. This is from the New York Times. Mr. Epstein and Mr. Gates first met face to face in the evening of January 31st, 2011. This is after Epstein served time. In Mr. Epstein's townhouse on the Upper East Side, they were joined by Dr. Eva Anderson Dubin, a former Miss Sweden who Mr. Epstein had once dated, and her 15-year-old daughter. Dr. Anderson Dubin's husband, the hedge fund billionaire Glenn Dubin, was a friend and business associate of Mr. Epstein's. The Dubins declined to comment. The gathering started at 8 and lasted several hours, according to Miss Arnold, Mr. Gates' spokeswoman. Mr. Epstein subsequently boasted about having the meeting in emails to friends and associates. Epstein was really transactional with this stuff. He used it to boost himself
leverage
immediately.
Yeah.
Bill's great, he wrote in one reviewed by the Times. Mr. Gates, in turn, praised Mr. Epstein's charm and intelligence, emailing colleagues the next day saying, "A very attractive Swedish woman and her daughter dropped by, and I ended up staying there quite late." So, what did you know about him? I knew he had some money, and also I knew that there was
Swedish women.
Yeah, what would maybe a 15-year-old Swedish girl, like, what would that bring up as far as like my previous information about Jeffrey Epstein? I don't know. Maybe that would trigger something.
Well, like I say, the value of it is, one, the catharsis of watching this guy squirm for a minute, but it also hopefully loosens the ground a little bit so people aren't so afraid to question him on a whole range of other things. Most importantly, his work in public policy health and his protection of IP and what he did to our education system in this country. We're still reeling from the impacts. And then just the broader structural thing. Put Gates aside for a moment. The idea that a guy who has judgment like he exhibited with Epstein could, on a whim, change the direction of world health, U.S. education, whatever it is, because he can expend whatever it is. He can, public transport, with Elon Musk. Having people walk around with that kind of money and the power that represents, who can make a decision with the same sort of amount of thought that I make in terms of, like, should we switch out these cameras? Which it really, honestly, probably dollar for dollar, maybe changing the cameras is actually even a bigger decision in terms of like how it materially impacts, my life, the expenditure of those dollars relative to, like, this guy could lose a couple billion behind the couch and not even know it.
Well, but he had to meet with Epstein to raise funds, so maybe you're underestimating how much he needs money.
The whole point, though, is that we do not want human beings to have that level of power in our world, because humans are fallible.
Yep. And the divine right of billionaires.
Indeed. Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.